So after you have deployed the Jumpstart ArcBox and you have done the post-deployment steps, everything is ready for you to use. So you got your sandbox environment hosted in Azure, ready with all the Arc virtual machines or Kubernetes cluster to use, depending on which flavor of the ArcBox you have deployed. In this case, we have deployed the ArcBox for IT pros, which again focuses mostly on Arc-enabled servers and a little bit of SQL. So we'll quickly have a look what you can do now with this. So if you're in the Azure portal and you go to Azure Arc, under machines, you will find a couple of Arc-enabled servers. Again, those are connected using a Arc agent, or what we call the Azure Connected Machine agent. Again, with ArcBox obviously simulated in Azure. And now you can actually show, test, and demo what Arc-enabled servers look like. So in this case, we have a couple of Linux machines here, as well as some Windows Server machines. And if you have a look at these machines, they will look like an Arc-enabled server because they are. And obviously you can see here they belong to an Azure subscription. And you can also see some detailed information over here as well. And you can then start using it. Now, we also enable Azure Monitor. So if you go to monitoring or insights here, you can basically see the performance data of these Arc-enabled servers. In this case, it's just focusing on this one, and you can see here CPU utilization, memory utilization, disks, information like IOs, throughput, latency, and so on. All the relevant information you need for that specific server. You also get some other management opportunities to use or capabilities like Windows Admin Center. You can try it out. You also get things like change management, inventory, and so on. And you can obviously also use Azure Policy, again, to basically audit these machines for all kinds of stuff, like is an agent installed or are certain security settings set as well. Another thing I want to quickly highlight is Azure Update Management. So with this, you basically can see that I have here, in this case, I have a couple of updates available. You can see what updates are available to actually install on that machines or are missing. So what you can do here is you could either check for updates, you can do a one-time update, you could schedule this, or you can also go to Update Manager, which then basically gives you an overview about all the different machines you have in your environment, and you can basically deploy updates to Azure virtual machines as well to Arc-enabled servers in a single control plane. Now for this, just to if you want to demo this, you could do, for example, a one-time update here, and you can see here I have that specific ArcBox server here. I select this one. I can then see what patches would be installed, but I can also go and select specific update classifications, include or exclude certain KBs, and do all that to manage specifically what I want to install. I can then also set some additional parameters, so reboot if required is usually a good one to keep. And then I can basically go and install, and then it takes around 5 minutes to actually go out and install these patches on the machine. And then after it's installed, it will basically go and reboot that machine. So be aware of that. If you're doing a demo, you probably don't want to do this right now. Now, again, also great to show capabilities. You can obviously also schedule this so that you can basically do this off work hours or something like that to manage that on your Arc-enabled server. And again, there's much more you can do here with Arc-enabled servers. And in the Jumpstart guide, you will find more information on how to do this as well. Another thing I want to show you here is the SQL Server we have also there. So on the SQL Server instances, you can find the ArcBox SQL. If I click on this, you can see here I can then get the SQL specific Arc capabilities. In this case, I can see what type of SQL Server is installed on that machine as we chose from the deployment. And then I can do some other get some other informations here. I can configure backup, monitoring here as well. So I have a performance dashboard. I get some data management, so I can look at the databases. And again, as I mentioned, configure some local backups there as well. I can also run the best practice assessment. So this is also automatically scheduled as well. You can see here we already did one assessment, and I will get a lot of like best practices for that machine, and I can have a look at that in these specific cases in terms of performance, security, but also availability and so on, which I then can get more information on what I should actually do. And then another great new feature is the migration assessment. So if I click on assessment here, it will actually help me to find out how can I actually migrate this to Azure, right? And gives me a confidence score and some sort of suggestions as well on what I should do with my SQL Server, which runs on-prem in this case. So again, a lot of great information you get, and you really have a demo environment to show these Arc-enabled server and Arc-enabled SQL Server capabilities as well. Another feature or another part of the ArcBox for IT pros, we also provide you with a Azure workbook, just as an example, which you can also in theory use for your production environments as well. So if you're familiar with Azure Monitor, workbook can actually get out like the data for these specific servers and systems you have in Azure, and you can actually visualize that data. In this case, obviously this one is focused on Arc-enabled Arc-enabled server OS performance. So I'm going to select the right subscription, going to select the right Log Analytics workspace. So for this one, we obviously, with the deployment of ArcBox, we deploy this specific workspace. So I select this, and now you can see here, I get the performance data nicely aggregated here in this view. And again, you can customize these workbooks the way you want it, the way you need it, and you can have a look at these informations here. So you get this nicely aggregated, and you can see what actually is happening in your environment. And this makes a great point of like how Arc enabling your servers which run on-prem or at other cloud providers, and then bringing it to the Azure control plane can now be nicely visualized and use the same tools as you would use for your Azure virtual machines. So you have one single control plane. So again, there's a lot of things to discover on ArcBox. There's a lot more you can do. Again, if you're not familiar with Azure Arc, check out the documentation pages, the Learn pages to learn more. And hopefully also check out more of the Jumpstart scenarios to actually go through and see how you can leverage the control plane using Azure Arc.